Right then, Thomas, the Frank engine Frank, is the man we believe is taking over the Tottenham Hotspurs, and me personally, think that is a sensational appointment, but one that does include a rather large roll of the proverbial dice. So we're going to go through both of those things that I think right now, as well as what his Tottenham team may end up looking like. So here we go. Don't know why I said, here we go then, that's quite embarrassing. Anyway, right, Thomas Frank, the most important thing to understand about him and his football is that there is no Frank ball. But Thomas Frank's Brentford, this is just their most used 11 last season, are not really Thomas Frank's Brentford in any sort of tactically definable sense. And this is a massive oversimplification, but there is nothing really that this team does purely because the manager believes deep down that's just how football should be played. Even the shape, the 4-2-3-1, it's not because Frank's a 4-2-3-1 guy. They play this because it gets the absolute best out of a number of their better players. It allows Wissa to stretch defences in behind and be the recipient of all the chances they create. It allows Damsgaard that optimised number 10 role in between the lines, which is important because when he's played a little bit deeper or when he's played a little bit wider, he's struggled to be as effective. It's allowed Mbermo to work as this wide forward who comes into these half spaces to get onto the ball, but also take a wider starting position to help himself get into the box. And the next highest appearance maker is Keane Lewis-Potter, who is a very young, developing left-back who is protected in this area by big, solid, dependable central midfielders and central defenders. He has room to grow. Now, the point I'm going to make now is going to sound really cynical, right? But just stay with me because I promise I mean it as a good thing, right? These four players were not signed by Brentford to allow their manager to realise some tactical dream. No, they were signed because they cost £8 million, £12 million, £5 million, and £16 million, respectively, and are now, with so much as a cursory glance at the transfer marked player values, which admittedly are not official, but they're at least pretty close, worth £45 million, £38 million, £29 million, and it looks like they're going to get somewhere between 60 and 70 for Mbermo. That's why they're here. And that's why I wanted to stress that I'm not just being cynical about this, because I'm an enormous admirer of how Brentford operate, but that is how Brentford operate. David Raya came in for £3.5 million, left for nearly 40. Ivan Toney came in for £5 million, left for 10 times that. Ollie Watkins, £6 million in, £30 million out. Ben Rama, Mope, Mepham, Concert. That is how you go from 14th in League Two to 5 very stable consecutive seasons in the Premier League and a shiny new stadium. And the reason, my dear chums, I point all of this out is to show you that Thomas Frank's role is not to impose some rigid tactical identity that he believes in. His job is to work with the players that an excellent recruitment department believes they find value in and maximise their potential, both through coaching and through his tactics in a game. And if that sounds like a negative, I assure you it is not, because the really important part of that, the coaching, the maximising a player's potential, Thomas Frank is fucking amazing at. Season just gone, he had the second lowest wage bill in the Premier League and they finished 10th. The season before, they had the 18th lowest wage bill, suffered one of the worst injury crises in the division, lost Ivan Toney to that 8-month gambling ban, and still survived. The year before that, lowest wage bill in the entire league, and 9th in the table. And I can remember the suggestions getting a little bit dismissed at the time, right? But I had it on very good authority from someone who, how can I put this, was involved in that situation, yeah, that feels safe, that he was this close to getting the Liverpool job in the summer. And the eventual decision to go with Arne Slot was obviously supported and has worked out very well, but was not unanimous. There were a lot of people at Liverpool who still thought Frank was the right appointment. He doesn't get the hype externally because he's not someone whose teams you can easily point at and go, there, you see, that's the thing all his teams do. That's what makes him a super genius. But just take it from me, right? Within football, Thomas Frank is considered one of the very best. However, here we get into the dry, wafery centre of the Kit Kat of a video. Does that necessarily make him a good appointment for Tottenham. Because what I have thus far been at pains to point out is that he is a very important and very talented part of a very, very well-oiled and functional structure. And now he's going to go work with Daniel Levy, who gets mixed reviews, shall we say. And I mean, I can show you what Thomas Frank's Tottenham is going to look like, because it's going to look pretty much exactly the same as Ange's. Maddison and Solanke are undeniably the two most talented attacking players in that squad at the minute, so you'll imagine they'll be what he builds the final third work around. And then Porro and Udogie are going to start spending way more time along the flanks and way less time in the middle, because he doesn't really want to do any of that. Porro in particular will be given this sort of room to allow Brennan Johnson to get into the box, so expect to see him back to his up and down and delivering the ball best. And he loves to create numerical overloads all over the pitch, so expect to see nice sort of neat little compact triangles on one side of the pitch between the fullbacks and the defensive midfielders and the centre-backs, in order to then hit the ball across the pitch to somebody who was theoretically in a lot of space because you've drawn the opposition over. And that's really all there is to it. What he'll do more than anything else is get this team back to basics. He'll make them difficult to beat again. And you'll almost certainly do that the same way he did it at Brentford. Like, if you look at the numbers from last season, they had the 15th lowest average possession in the division, but were the 5th highest scorers. And the way you square those two seemingly conflicting statistics with each other is simply discipline. They didn't just hang on to the ball when nothing was going on. They were quite happy to let the opposition have it, sit a little bit deeper and wait for the right opportunities to develop, in particular to get Mbeumo and Wissa in. And as a result, they had over 100 more goalkeeper passes than any team and the most touches in the ball in the entire division inside their own penalty area. Because when they did have the ball, they were patient with it. They didn't just needlessly give it back if they didn't have to. Again, they would wait for the right opportunities to develop. And yes, that did lead to some accusations of sometimes being a bit pedestrian, sometimes being a bit boring. But look at last season. Look how many goals they scored doing it. Like, they battered some genuinely good teams. But when you look at numbers like that, like the low possession and the ponderous play at the back, it's easy to mistake that for being all they were doing. Like, what I really like about Frank is that yes, he would give this to his teams to make them solid, to make them stable, to make them hard to beat, but it was always just something he would then build upon. Like, to word that a lot better, Brentford always had a very well put together attacking plan to really hurt the opposition, but Frank would always build it from a robust and solid defensive plan first. It was always there, it was always the point, but he didn't want to, like, leave them too open doing it. And just to show you what I mean, right, if we rank all of their games by the possession they had, then yeah, the low end, we've got Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal. They were super organised in those games. They were happy to sit really deep. They were happy to soak up the pressure, cut off the middle of the pitch. But wait a minute, hang on. Why is Southampton in amongst all of those teams? Well, because despite all the evidence Southampton were getting to the contrary literally every single week, they still wanted to have a lot of possession, to build out from the back. And they were terrible at defending fast counter-attacking sides. So Thomas Frank was more than happy to have Brentford sit off them, not allow them entries into the final third, and then counter-attack at pace. Almost every single chance Brentford get in that game comes from a turnover in their own half or slightly further forward, meaning that when they got into the final third, they weren't coming up against a settled and sort of structured defensive shape. They were in situations like this, where there's loads of room, where you can have loads of fun. Like, they totally conceded possession to the worst side in the division, which sounds insane, but it was an exercise in adaptability, and it won them that game of football. But on the other hand, while they are clearly a low possession side, sometimes they are just the better team, and their game plan then becomes to dominate the ball a lot more than they usually would. Like, here's Ipswich, here's Leicester, even Tottenham in the games where they had way more of the ball. And obviously it doesn't always work. Like, you can see there's plenty of D's and L's in all of those columns, but this approach he has gets them playing way above the level they're supposed to be at. Like, Brentford are a mid-table team, a comfortable mid-table team. And if you follow the logic that the league table should normally match up with the wage table, they are consistently the biggest and best overperformers in the Premier League, and it's because Frank adapts them in every single game they play. They pick up more points than they've probably got any right to pick up. Here's another really good example. Like, Brentford are not one of the league's high pressers. I think they rank in the bottom half for shots leading directly from a high turnover. Should have looked that up before I did the video. I'll put it on screen now so you've got more information than I have. But anyway, they're not one of the league's high pressers, and yet in some games, they'll high press really well. This is Chelsea, and Brentford know that Sanchez's long distribution is a problem. So they set up, when Chelsea have the ball at the back, to stop all of his short options. And the main thing to spot in this clip, which shows you the quality of the coaching, right, is that Visser charges out to close down this pass. But the second it goes back to Sanchez, he stops running, because the objective is not to try and pressure Sanchez, it's just to get him to go long, which of course, all these options being cut off, he does. Brentford immediately win the ball back because his kicking is bad, and they get a chance from this situation. And this stuff is also why, like, putting the Arsenal hype this season to one side, they've long been considered the best set-piece team in the Premier League, because that is a marginal gain. It's something you can coach incremental improvements into. They're one of the early adopters of having proper set-piece coaches. Like, I know we're all obsessed with, like, clever corner routines now, right? But in the Premier League last season, no team scored more than once from a throw-in, right? Except for Brentford, who scored 5. God, you really can see how broken this finger still is, can't you? But yes, sorry, what was my point? Throw-ins, yes. Thomas Frank is not ideologically wedded to the idea of throw-ins. That's just something that you can improve in your team through good coaching. Thus, he improves it through good coaching. That's what he does. And the same goes for the system. Like, it's been a 4-2-3-1 pretty much all season, but there's been plenty of games where instead, let's see if I can just set this up while I'm actually talking and saying it out loud, is that what that looks like? They've gone with like a 3-5-2 situation with wingbacks. And Frank likes to do this especially in the big games, because not only does it give you the option of defending with a back 5, very nice, very solid, but also if you attack with the front 5 players while still keeping this stable base, it means the opposition can get pulled around quite a lot. Like, most good teams with a back 4 don't get a lot of protection from the attackers, so you can stretch them out much better this way in attack. So again, goes back to that whole thing of he will set his team up to be as stable and secure as possible, but always with the ultimate goal of making them effective in attack at the same time. That's the kind of manager he is. And like, just to hammer this point across, any manager can change the formation. You can set any team up in any way he wants, but it's the coaching of getting players so comfortable with the level of adaptability he requires. Like, some games, they're very deep. They sit in a 4-4-2 block. They become hard to break down. And in others, they will press really high and they'll try and win the ball back much further up. They'll change the formation. They'll change the shape. They'll change what they're doing individually. And the key to that is the coaching. That's what very few managers can actually do. It's what Thomas Frank does. So the main takeaway you should have here is one of adaptability. Like, I personally really liked Ange Postecoglou, but it was impossible to get away from the criticism that in the Premier League especially, his just rigid ideology for how he wanted them to play was becoming a bit of a hindrance and probably not helping with the injury situation. Thomas Frank is like the spiritual, cultural opposite to all of that. He has no ego when it comes to how his teams play. He just wants to get a result. And thus, he adapts what his team is doing in every single game they play. And for a long time, I have believed he has deserved a chance to try this out at a, God, I'm not going to use the B word, at a more high-profile club with increased scrutiny and increased expectation. The B word there was bigger, by the way, just because I hate the whole, like, big club argument. It wasn't Bumberclart. So yeah, this is what I think Thomas Frank's Tottenham Hotspur are going to look like next season, because if the club have any sense whatsoever, the moves they make in the transfer market aren't established players with no room to develop. It's gems you've probably never heard of who probably don't immediately then go into the starting 11. His job is to take what is already, in my opinion, a very good 11 and get them away from the bottom of the table. Get them where this team should be, like the top end. But yeah, that's it. So if you have enjoyed this little foray into the hypothetical, let us know what you make of it in the comments. Tottenham fans, are you excited by Frank? Are you sad about Ange? Would you have rather had somebody else? All thoughts, feelings, of course, welcome. And of course, if you haven't already subscribed to us here at ACFC, please do click the button, because maybe Maybe this is the 100,000 subs video. Maybe this is the video that do that. Come on, Tottenham fans. You don't want it to be something I do on Arsenal or Liverpool, do you? Have some pride. Click the thing. You get me across all the social medias at Adam Clery, Clery, and that's it. I've said everything already. This is just a fantastic appointment, in my opinion. Well done, everyone involved. Goodbye.